Yes, Assalamualaikum and a very good day, everyone. So I'm Fatimah Solihah binti Abdul Halim, a PhD candidate from English Language Studies, UKM. So now I'll be presenting an extended abstract entitled Websites Promotional Messages in Medical Tourism in Malaysia and Singapore from Intercultural Perspective. All right, so but beforehand, let me start with sharing with you the slides that I have prepared for this presentation, right? So, all right, moving on to the introduction. All right, so we have here, we know that the global market of medical tourism is projected to experience a great downfall, for this year due to the COVID-19. And this has caused many leading medical tourism destinations to be severely affected by COVID-19, especially those in Southeast Asian countries, including Malaysia and Singapore, because they are known as among the most popular market, medical tourism destination in the Southeast Asian markets. And in combating the decline of revenue from the medical industry sector, Malaysia and Singapore have actively promoted their medical tourism through online promotional medium, which is website. Right, so the problem statements of the research here lies in how the websites are constructed. Okay, so we have two elements here. The first one is the combination of text and visual. As you can see, the online promotion via websites do not only include text, but also a collection of images, multimedia, interactive elements, animated graphics and audio. And such an intricacy specifies that the creation and construction of interesting and resourceful web pages are challenging. And then the inclusion of diverse cultural background further complicates the task. This is the fact that websites are constructed and presented in diverse cultural backgrounds due to the culture sensitive nature in their design, content, layout, and multimodal communicative act. All right, so nonetheless, despite the cultural significance having been considered in the website, inadequate studies have been undertaken on medical tourism promotional discourse from the viewpoint of culture. Okay, this is because they focus only on this. They focus too much on the Western cultures, and if let's say we're speaking of in ASEAN country, the focus is on Chinese and Japanese culture. These two have been majorly emphasized as ASEAN cultures. So this is the research gap where we notice that past studies focus on the cultures have very little coverage or have not been studied extensively on the medical tourism websites available in Malaysia and Singapore. All right, so that is why this study analyzed how intercultural communication, are interacted in Malaysia and Singapore websites, medical tourism websites. So the objective of this study were twofold. The first one was to analyze and compare the similarities and the differences that appear between the way private hospital websites construct their web pages using language and visual. So here comes the multimodal analysis. And then for the second one is to examine whether the identified choices can be accounted for from the point of view of cultural difference. So here we link it with the cultural elements here. All right, so for this study, we used two private hospital websites from two countries, which is Malaysia and Singapore, for the variance purpose. And then the private hospitals in Malaysia is the Prince Court, and while from the Singapore we have Gleneagle Hospital. All right, so the websites were derived from the Medical Travel Quality Alliance, websites that rank the private hospital for medical tourism. All right, so these two, were listed as the top 10 hospital of 2019 for medical tourists in the world. All right, and then the 3 web pages were chosen for each hospital. Okay, basically both websites were presented in English. Okay, so that's why we chose this website. They were written in English to assure the international distribution of the promotional messages, since we are focusing on the promotional messages, right? So we need to have the medium of interaction which is suitable, which is English. Okay, all right. So moving on with the theoretical framework. Okay, there are two phases of analysis in this study, since this study employed two frameworks. Right, so the analysis of each website starts with the multimodal discourse analysis, and then the focus shifted. Okay, but for the multimodal discourse analysis, we have two different mode of analysis. We have linguistic analysis, where we use Halliday and Matheson theory, and then we also have Press and Van Leeuwen for visual analysis. And then the focus shifted to the way the two modes, you mean the linguistic and visual, uh, to the way the two modes will combine to create a meaningful multimodal act conveyed as an informative or persuasive message. All right, so from there, the result that we got from there will be discussed using Hall's cultural dimension of content dependency. Then only we get the different cultural characteristics and promotional strategies between countries, right? Okay, and then for the result. For the result, we have two phases of result. The first one is result coming from the multimodal analysis. The second one is the result that we got from the, what do you call it? From relating the multimodal act analysis to from intercultural perspective. So for the first result that we get, first phase of the result that we get for Malaysia generally, okay, if you look at the last point, generally the multimodal communicative act primarily informed and subsequently demonstrated things to see, you know, it's more to informed, okay, and it neglect persuasive argumentation in the background. All right, so here we can see that the pictures provide a more objective impression than the text, okay, as shown by the medium shots and the presence of people, you know. All right, and then for the Singapore, the extra factor elements that they have is they also include the virtual video, the 360 degree virtual video, which attracted visitors to the hospital, so that the visitors also can experience the online promotion virtually. They could visualize and decide whether or not visiting the destination is possible, you know. And then the multimodal act mirrored promotional design, namely the picture as the guaranteed product while the text was considered as the actual product. Okay, the images gave the impression of indirect persuasion. Okay, it's more like, you know, giving indirect persuasion through meanings that attracted the senses while the text supplied factual information. Okay, so this is the summary of cultural perspective of the websites from both countries. We have PCMC and GLN Singapore websites. If you can see here, for Malaysia, okay, the intercultural perspective is divided into two contexts. We have low context and we also have high context. So here are the characteristics which belong to the low context and high context. Okay, and we can see if we relate the identified multimodal features, you know, that we identified earlier. The Malaysian hospital websites used medium and long transparent page to present PCMC to make information easy to access. So these are actually the feature encountered in low context culture. All right. So they have more other characteristics. For example, the web page also contain framed elements, you know, such as the title and the image, and salience such as the logo, and we have logo. They also share the medical staff images. So this indicates the focalization of information which is common in low context culture. So overall, the message appeared to be transmitted mainly textually by explicit verbal code, which is the practice that is typical of low context culture. While Singapore, on the other hand, contain interactive, they contain interactive visual with something like visual, virtual video, you know, that occupied the entire screen and presented most of the information with the short text following it. And this indicates a focalization of information that is typical of low context cultures, But however, the text was short and constructed the text, the written text with mainly simple clauses transmitting, which is typical of high context culture, right? So the message was developed by mainly continuous unmarked themes. So there are unmarked themes which reflect organization that is preferred by low context culture. It's a combination of low and high. Here we can see in Singapore. All things considered, the message appeared to be transmitted firstly, message firstly visually, and then verbally. So the focus is on the visual first and then the verbal, okay, and textually. A practice usually encountered in high context culture. So here we know that Singapore is more towards high context culture, which has been classified by Hall by saying that ASEAN countries, they are of high context culture. So this one, from this result, we know that Singapore do not really, it has a combination of low but not really obviously transformed into low context culture, just like what Malaysia websites did. And for the conclusion, we can say that the summary from the result, we can say that PCMC, Malaysia web pages contain features mainly encountered in low context culture, such as elaborated code system, direct, the message transferred directly, explicit and highly structured message, and focalized information. We saw the characteristics in the tables now, right? So on the other hand, the GLN web pages contain, GLN means the Gleneagle Singapore, contextual features that are mainly typical of high context culture, such as visual preference, restricted code system, unstructured and non-linear message, shared experiences and knowledge, and emphasis on perceptions. Right? So these inconsistencies can be rationalized through the fluctuation and impacts of globalization. That's the first agent, the first factor. And the domestic reshuffling of politics, economy, and society in Malaysia and Singapore. So they also point to the inclination of cultural patterns to be influenced by the medium of communication, so such as the internet, and the context of communication, such as the types of promotion, right? Just like for this one, we have online promotion. So the results from the study focus on the necessity to comprehend multimodality and interculturality, in promoting tourism online, specifically in producing an image or a brand to guarantee that a successful international promotion can be achieved by a particular country. So here, we noticed that the findings demonstrated that systemic functional linguistic and intercultural perspective provide a beneficial means from both the theoretical and practical viewpoints, which can also be applicable in other aspects, such as for creating promotional messages, online marketing campaigns, medical tourism discourse and its strategies, and intellectual communication. So I think, okay, so that is the conclusion for the abstract, standard abstract. So I think that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.